and welcome to the BYU Library Family History webinar. We're so glad you could join us today. I'm Rachel Bettis, and I'll be your host for this webinar. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box and I can address your concerns. You're also welcome to use the chat box during the webinar for comments, insights, and questions. However, all questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. We will not be having a webinar next week because of the 4th of July holiday, but we hope that you'll be able to join us for our next webinar on July 11th with James Tanner on what can I do if my ancestors came from Hungary. If you'd like to access a previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded by the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. For today's webinar, we are pleased to hear from Dr. Roger Minert on your first confrontation with an old document in Germany. Before we begin, here's a little bit about Dr. Minert. Roger P. Minert received his doctoral degree through the Ohio State University in German language history and second language acquisition theory. He taught German language and history for 10 years and then became a professional family history researcher. Accredited by the Family History Library for research in Germany and Austria, he worked for 12 years as a private genealogical researcher. From 2003 to 2019, he served as a professor of family history at Brigham Young University. The author of 208 publications, he directs the research program German Immigrants in American Church Records. The series now consists of 38 volumes. In 2019, Dr. Minert was recognized for his years of service to the Palatines to America Society and also received the Shirley Reamer Lifetime Achievement Award from the International German Genealogy Partnership. We'll now turn the time over to Dr. Minert.
There. So instead of just the first confrontation with an old document in Germany, we'll just have old document in German, in any place. I specialize in working with Germans anywhere in the world. Germans in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, in any of the places that are now called different names. So including Germans in Indiana, Germans in Australia, Germans in Africa. So, and I've been pleased to be in this field avocationally since 1972, vocationally since 1993, and it has been a most gratifying, satisfying, challenging occupation. So now I'm retired, but I still work on German records 25 to 30 hours a week. I'll tell you more about that as we go. Some of you have been in my world before, so I'm not a stranger to you. So here's the question. Let's see, I wonder if I can get rid of those darn commands and things. I hope you can't see them because they certainly are in my way. Okay, what is this document worth? Well, I'll answer that question for you. If I can get my PowerPoint to function. Essentially nothing if you can't read it. I mean, that may be, I hope that doesn't come across as a negative comment, but it really is true. There's nothing here of value to you unless you can read it. You might say, wait a second, I can see a number. No, I think I can see what might be a surname, but is it the surname you're after? Is the number of any importance to you? Who are these people? Or are they not people? Are they places and things? So, well, instead of looking at something terrible, let's look at something a lot prettier. A lot of you are saying, oh, I love the column entries because I know where every kind or every type or every classification will occur in these columns from page to page. Yes, that's true. So, but on the other hand, there'll be people saying, wait a second, I would prefer to see something like this, freehand writing, because I'm not restricted by being forced to put in only certain information in each category, in each of the columns. So, but on the other hand, I love this one because it is characterized by bleed through. Now, most of you realize that if you're a right-hander, your letters will slant to the right as you write. But look at all those lines that are very specifically slanting to the left. You can see a lot of those. Those are written on the back side. This was sent to me as part of a large collection of letters written from Germany to a German immigrant farmer in Indiana. So, and I love the German word wegdenken. It means literally to think it out of existence. As I'm reading on this side, I'm not seeing any of those lines that slant to the left. I'll turn the page over and do that there. So fortunately, most people, most of my listeners today will not deal with records like that. But the fact of the matter is, somebody in this world can read those. So I'd rather have this than nothing, to be sure. And then we have things like this. This is the tiniest bit out of focus, but that's part of the real world, to be dealing with documents that aren't perfectly focused. But it's partially good and partially bad. You can recognize a lot of things. The year 1866. You might even see the word Georg, George, the second name under the Eltern. You might recognize that as the parents written in that category. So, well, in any case, there's obviously a spectrum of simplicity and difficulty in all kinds of writing. I went to the Spring City office the other day and I said, may I see the oldest records you have, the oldest historical records for the city? And they said, well, that's 1871. And the question the lady had was, can you read stuff from 1871? And my response could easily have been, but not arrogantly, well, I traditionally read things from the 1500s on a regular basis. So 1871 is not a challenge to me. What does one need to know if one wishes to be able to read every old document? Now, I need your participation. We don't have a huge number of people today, but they're obviously the best students. So could somebody turn the mic on and say, well, in order to read old documents, I need to know this, that, the other. Give me a couple.
Unfortunately, they can't unmute, but they can send it in the chat and I can read those
Oh,
off.
okay, good. So my request to you is please send the chat, just send to Rachel, and Rachel will say, we have a response here from Nancy, or we have a response here from Jack, and we'll get it that way. So,
Okay, Midge says what the source is, and Pat says someone who can read it.
oh, great. Okay. Yes, like I said, everybody, there is a reader for every document. If you reach the point, and a lot of researchers do, you cannot read that last word or that last phrase, there is somebody who can. Okay. Yes, the source, that's really important. In fact, that's one of the major points we're going to be dealing here. Any other ideas? Any other things?
Someone who said Fraktur and current Schrift.
Okay, you'd like to know the Fraktur alphabet, and you'd like to know the Kurrent, which is more correctly called Deutsche Schrift, and we'll deal with that. Yes, you've got to know those. That's really important. Very, very important. Any other responses?
Facebook groups translation.
Yes, we have some interesting translation websites nowadays. We still have to admit what Brigham Young University found in an extremely detailed study, 1975, 1977, that computer translations can do a lot of work, but must be overseen by a human editor. And that's still true today. That may be even true after we've applied artificial intelligence, AI, to this entire field. Well, on we go. Now, I'd like to introduce to you and practice with you what I call the Laca analysis. I developed this 30-some years ago, before I came to BYU, which was 2003. So your initial confrontation with the document, LACA, and I'd like you to memorize this. It's not going to take much effort. L for language or languages. We're going to go through each one of these in detail. Then we're going to look at a bunch of documents and have you respond to questions regarding those documents. L for language or languages. Have you ever seen a document that has more than one language? Well, if you've ever looked at the contract on your house or the tax statement that came from the county to you regarding the home you own, it might say John Smith Etux, ETUX, which is short for et uxor, in Latin for and spouse. The first A is alphabet. Once again, I put a possible S on there. So somebody already mentioned that it would be really nice to know not only the Fraktur alphabet, but the Deutsche Schrift, sometimes called Kurrent, totally different alphabets. And we'll very, very often find those in the same document. The C for content. Well, that really helps. I remember so many times for 10 years before BYU called me to take over the German family history program, I worked essentially every day in the family history library back in the old days when everything was done on microfilm. And at the consultation desk where I served as a church service missionary, people would bring up a microfilm, put it on the reader, turn it around and say, I don't know what's going on here. I can't find the name of the child. And I might say, well, this is not a baptismal record. It's actually a death record, death burial. Oh, that's why I can't find, that's the right year, but I'm in the wrong kind of event, what we call content. And the second A, authors. Does it matter who wrote that? Well, in some cases, yes. That document I showed you that had the lions running in the opposite direction because of bleed through, that was really important because it was written by a German ancestor to her son who had immigrated to Indiana. And that letter was passed down to somebody in the 1990s in Ohio. So the author there was really important, and it's very, very interesting. And had the author been somebody else, the person who owned the letter might have said, oh, this doesn't, I don't want to spend any money having this translated because it's not my person of interest. So here we go. What is the language of the document? Shall I have somebody chat in and say, well, it's either this or that or this. We're in Germany or we're in German populations. What languages can we find in these documents? Who'd like to help us?
Okay, we have Latin and German.
Latin and German, excellent. Okay, so we'll put in German as number one. And how do you like that? Yes, the second most popular one. By the way, let's deal with some myths while we're at it, some wives' tales for that matter. I've heard people say, well, if it's Latin, it's a Catholic record. Or they'll do the converse, which is if it's Catholic Church, it'll be Latin alphabet, Latin language. That's partially true, but please don't use things like that as overall, as summaries, as presumptions that anything you see in Latin must be Catholic. Not at all true. I can show you countless Lutheran records where Latin terms are used, not traditionally in their entirety, but I can show you more Catholic records where German is the language. Any other languages you might think that would occur in the German language realm? Think of the bordering states
We
where
have someone
people,
saying French.
French, excellent. Let's see what we have here. Ah, there it is. So this is in order, the languages in order of frequency, the languages you will encounter when you're dealing with documents in the German populations among the people who speak German. So you might even seen some wonderful things like the child is Philip, but in the Catholic Church, they might want to use the Latin ending, so they'll say Philippus. But nobody ever called that child Philippus after the day he was baptized as an infant. So I remember my mother standing at the top of the stairs yelling for 6 boys, Roger, David, Lauren, Brian, Dan, John, trying to figure out which one she wanted and trying to get through the 6 names. So, but nobody would ever be standing at the door saying, Philippus, come to dinner, or Georgius, it's time to eat, or Antonius, you didn't do your homework. That didn't happen. So now French. Can anybody tell us where in the world you'd expect to find the French language among German speaking people? Anybody have an idea? It's a huge territory.
Midge says, oh, lots of people say Alsace.
Yeah, Alsace-Lorraine, you bet. That is the dual province that went back and forth between Germany and France several times, and almost totally German-speaking populace, but the French were the ones in the government, and when they brought in the French language in the documents about German people. And they also changed names. That's really funny too, because let's see, instead of Johann, they would write Jean. It would be Johann Schmidt. They'd write Jean Schmidt. And let's see, what do we have here? Right, of course, Heinrich Klein in the French records would become Henri Klein. And of course, when we deal with those records, we're going to put them back into German. Well, you could have, well, what do we have? We have Polish on the east, we have Danish to the north, we have Dutch to the west, the northwest. So anytime you're dealing with those borderline territories, you can get some phrases, and in some cases, entire documents in that neighboring language or dialect. Okay, so what's the first A stand for? L for language. First A is for alphabet or alphabets. So now somebody already told us that it would be really nice if we knew how to deal with the two major alphabets. Well, I shouldn't say that. With two of the major alphabets in German records. The handwritten alphabet from way, way back, we call the Deutsche Schrift. In Austria, they call that Kurrent. There are some German authors who have used the term Kurrent, K-U-R-R-E-N-T. So let's see what we have here. Alphabets, the German alphabet Fraktur. Fraktur is defined as typeset. Typeset. This is what you print books with. This is what you print newspapers, certificates, fill in the blank church records. Could easily say the father is blank, the mother is blank, the child was born on the blank day of the month of blank, and that's all in typeset. The good thing about Fraktur is for any given record, it's invariant. Every A looks like every other A. Every T looks like every other T. That's not at all true with handwriting, is it? And of course, the handwritten. Gothic is actually not a good term, and I explain why that's not a good term historically in my handwriting book. So we call it that. One of these days, I'm going to go into old literature and figure out who it was, probably in the 1920s or 30s in the United States, who began to talk about the old German handwriting as Gothic. If you happen to know the answer to that, let me know. But if I have a good 20 or 30 hours of research time available, I want to find that out and introduce that to the world. So not to say this is the person who made the mistake, but I'd like to know how and when that came about. Okay, Latin, really important. Now keep in mind, let's see, other, good heavens, what else do we have? Well, we have Cyrillic, we have Greek. I've seen Greek many times in German church records because quite often on the title page where the pastor is setting up a brand new book, he will show his knowledge obtained in the seminary of Greek. And he'll write that in Greek and we'll think that's really cute. This is the only time he'll ever be able to write it in Greek because it doesn't really matter if somebody sees it and can't read it, including you and me. I can't read Greek. Yes, you're saying that's all Greek to me. So what else do we have here? Other, Cyrillic, for that matter. If you're dealing with Austria-Hungary and get into the areas where you have the Russian Orthodox coming up, then you can see Cyrillic. That's another alphabet I do not deal with. So here's the Fraktur. A, E, B, C, D, E, F. I put some X's on these. By the way, you really have to know this inside and out. This has got to be something second nature to you if you're dealing with German records anywhere among German populations in this world. I marked F and S. You can see the difference. F has a stroke through the stem, a horizontal stroke through the stem. S does not. Otherwise, they are so close to absolutely identical. Look at, let's see, what do we have there? Why K? Oh, yes, K because it's top heavy. Just like in the word Fraktur. In the Latin alphabet, the one you and I grew up writing, K is bottom heavy. Look at the R. If you contrast the R with the X, you'll see that the R and the X are identical, except for the little tiny tail on the X. So if you happen to be seeing something in the Church of Saint Alexander, it'll have that, what looks like an R with a little tiny tail to it. But it's obviously not going to be the Church of Saint Alarander. It's going to be Alexander. So get to know this really well. Look at the uppercase letters. C, G, O, and S all have a big, fat, round configuration. And you've got to be able to recognize that when you see it. Fortunately, C is extremely rare as an uppercase letter in the German language. Almost every one of those comes from a foreign language. Okay, and here's my favorite. I love this, Deutsche Schrift, the official name for handwriting in general from 1500 essentially to 1941, when the Reich Ministry of Education decided that they would use the Latin alphabet because everybody else in the world, including in 1941, many countries under military occupation, military government under Germany, they couldn't read this. You couldn't post anything in this language in Warsaw or in Paris telling people, hey, get off the streets by 8 p.m. We got a curfew now. So you had to go use the alphabets that those people used, which were Latin, and they called Antigua, what we call Times New Roman or something like that. So there it is. And I'd love to have you know that as well. In my handwriting courses that I taught for many, many years, within the first 2 lessons, I would have my students writing their name in this alphabet, including uppercase letters. And that introduced them to the difficulty writing the letters, which gives them a better idea about the difficulty of deciphering. Because as you well know, some writers write just illegibly. I have to use the word, I'm sorry. I love to watch my wife sign her name because since second grade or whatever, she can sign in perfect cursive and really fast. It's absolutely fascinating. I watched her do that last week because every time she writes, I lean over and watch and brrr, perfect configuration of letters. That's not true for me. In fact, as soon as somebody hands me something to fill out, I hand it to my wife. If we want it done correctly, she'll do it. Okay, now, the Latin alphabet, the one that we learned as children. Now, I'm guessing that all the participants of this particular webinar here are coming from the North American background, and you were taught the Roman alphabet. But do this. Next time you're at church, ask people, what alphabet do you write by hand? And of course, you'll have to ask the old people because the young people don't write at all anymore. They just type. And you'll get some really funny responses. Some people say Arabic, or they might say Latin or Roman. They might say English alphabet. Every time I ask people, I pretty much expect and am quick to find out that they don't know that it's called the Latin or the Roman alphabet. However, the numbers, the numerals 1 through whatever, are written in a different one. Who knows the alphabet where we got our numerals from? I'll pause for 5 seconds while somebody chimes in.
Midge says Arabic.
That's exactly right, Arabic. The Arabic language is where we got our numerals. Okay, now, LA, language, alphabets, the C stands for content. Now, if all you're doing is family history, then what you really want are vital entries, birth, christening, marriage, death, burial. Those are important. Now, you're already thinking about authors. That's our second A in the Laca analysis. We'll get to that in a minute. But vital entries, we really want birth, marriage, and death. But let's see, what else do we have here? Other church events. Well, you tell me. Somebody write in and tell Rachel, well, besides birth, christening, marriage, death, burial, what else happens in church?
Confirmation.
Confirmations, excellent. This is
Dance.
basically when people become adults in the religion, the age of 14 or so. What else was it?
Bonds? I'm not sure if I'm saying that
Bans,
correctly.
yes, bans. This is the process of proclamations where somebody, either the pastor or one of the deacons, makes the announcement, generally right after this sermon when people have gone out and they're standing in front of the church. They'll say, hear ye, Johann Schmidt has declared his intentions to marry Maria Braun. If anybody has any reason to suggest this should not happen, please tell us right now. And that's done 3 consecutive Sundays. Those are called bans, B-A-N-N-S, or proclamations. That's a big one. So now other church events, donations is a big one. I'm reviewing some Moravian records now in Wisconsin, and they go to great lengths to show this person donated this much money every month or every year. Those are really important. Now, if you're looking at church records, many of which have been microfilmed in the United States, thousands and thousands of churches. That's the basis for my work in German immigrants and American church records. The filmers, the microfilm operators, were told to shoot everything. They shot church committee meeting minutes. They shot histories. They shot, oh, this is really fun, when people were disfellowshipped, were excommunicated. Excommunication is, of course, a word we took from the Catholics back in the Nauvoo days. So lots of other events and reports. Great stuff. Lightning struck our church tower and it burned down. We rescued the bell. We'll be putting a new one up at the cost of $242. And this is great stuff. But I really do like when you read about, we had to censure Ebenezer Brown because he has been drunk so many times and has actually entered the church building in that state. And we have indicated to him that he will be excommunicated if he does not stop. Other things like wife beating, or Brother Johann Hartmann has not paid his dues for 6 months now. He's been remonstrated, for that matter. If he doesn't continue to do this, we will have to take his name off the books. Those are great. I love those, but most of you don't have the time to read those, and they do require vocabulary that you cannot predict. Birth, marriage, and death records vocabulary is highly predictable. Okay, so, and the sky is the limit. There's no limit to the number of things you can find. I've translated licenses. I've translated school grade notices. I've translated business documents. Well, of course, in the modern era, I've translated chemistry, legal, contract stuff, you name it. I have logged more than 5 million words of translation in and out of 5 different languages. It's been part and parcel of my education. So here we go. Author. Now, church authority. Do we care about the name of the Catholic priest in 1695 who wrote all the birth, the baptism, marriage, burial? Do we care about that? Somebody chime in, please. Is that important? Do we record that somewhere?
Pat says yes.
Okay, that'd be great. If you want to know every single possible thing about your family, you could record that. But in many cases, and if you're looking at some of the hundreds of thousands of German records, books for that matter, microfilmed in the Family History Library system, you're going to be hard-pressed to ever find the name of the pastor. Once in a blue moon, it might say, as of this point, Pastor so-and-so, or at the start of the book, I wrote an article about this once in the Württemberg church, where as you walk into the church building, to the left is a great big, it's a wooden tablet on the wall, and it says the name of the pastor for exactly which years he was in office. And that's marvelous history. But in many cases, as you're reading along, you've seen this before, I'm sure. You have somebody whose handwriting is not all that thrilling for 10 or 15 pages, and all of a sudden, a new writer comes in with gorgeous handwriting. You're thinking, thank heavens for this man, but who is he? Well, you might be able to find out the name of the previous one, because go to the death record, it might say, Pastor so-and-so has died and we buried him, et cetera, et cetera. You'll get his name, but the new writer probably didn't introduce himself by name. So when it comes to an author in the Family History Library catalog, it's going to say nothing more than St. Boniface Catholic Church. That's the author. So, civil authority, now, they have to sign every record. And in most civil records, which, by the way, take one or even two full pages in the record, the name of the agent, the mayor in the earlier days, and the city secretary or county recorder signs his name at the bottom. Now, in some cases, you cannot read that signature, just like people may not be able to read your signature or, heaven help us, my signature. That's why we so often say, name printed, name signed. So the reader has some idea who you are. And once again, under B, when you're doing your source notes, you do not need to include the name of the city recorder there. So other is, of course, unlimited. So you can have committees signing, you can have businesses signing. This is Zions Bank, Provo, Utah, without a person's name. That's a legal document. Okay, now, here comes the fun part. We've got a good 20 minutes left on this. We're going to do a Laca analysis on each of the following documents. I need you to be, let's see, what did Lady Macbeth say? Screw your courage to the sticking post and you shall not fail. Can anybody tell us anything about this? Language, alphabet, content, author. Does anybody know any part of this at all? Tell us, well, I see such and such, and that represents this.
Okay, we have someone says German and marriage, and someone says Latin.
Okay, somebody says German. Yes, it is German, and I'm looking through this again. I picked these out just the other day. This is a brand new PowerPoint, just for you, by the way. The fact of the matter is, every single bit of this is German language. But what about alphabets? Is Cincinnati written in Gothic? What about the name Louis Franklin, son of John H. Allen and his wife, Maria Weitmann? What are all those names written? By the way, this is a really important concept in deciphering handwriting. And that is, I have documents from Germany stating very clearly personal and place names are to be written in the Latin alphabet, not because the German reader in München, Köln, Frankfurt, Berlin can read Latin better. No, to make them stand out, where people say, oh, Louis Franklin, that's the name. But then it goes into German, Gothic, Zone Fun, and then back to Latin, John H. Allen, back to German, und seiner Ehefrau, back to Latin, Maria, back to German, geboren, back to Latin, Weidmann. So language is totally German. Alphabets are Latin and Gothic. We have no pre-printed Fraktur. So we have two alphabets. Content, the top word on the left, Taufregister. Who can translate that? Taufregister.
We have SF said baptism register.
Precisely. This is the registry of baptisms. Okay. Oh, by the way, it says geführt von W. Ahrens, kept by W. Ahrens. That is the pastor. By the way, I can show you also documents saying the pastor is personally to make every entry in the books and is not to employ anybody for that purpose. So when people say, oh, the pastor usually had the local schoolmaster sign it, false. That's another one of those. I think I might have written an article once about the top 10 wives' tales. No, top 10 false legends or something like that in German. And that W. Ahrens has almost got to be the pastor. Okay, so there's the question of the author. Even though we don't need that, we've got it here. Language, alphabets, content, author, got them all. Okay, here's the next one. Can anybody help us with anything here? Languages, alphabets, content, author. What do you see? What do you know?
Okay, we have a couple people that said death register. Someone said marriage record, and they say Latin alphabet, German, and couldn't Latin names, German text.
Okay, super. Every bit of that except one detail was correct. I won't point that out. But the fact of the matter is, this is a death record. Did you know that? Because in the far right column, it says 8 months and 10 days, or 3 months and 17 days. That can only occur in a death record. Now, if we look at things like names that are so easy to read, Christian Friedrich Grünhagen, that is the Latin alphabet that you and I learned in school, some of us many years ago. So, but you're also right if you said the German alphabet, because we have Sohn des Bauern, son of the farmer. And then we go back to Latin again, Karl Grünhagen. So here's Tochter for daughter. So in each case, the person who died is identified by a relationship with somebody else. Son of this person, daughter of that person. Then it might say wife of this person, husband of this person. But up above, we have totally Deutsche Schrift. This is all written in the old German handwriting, the Gothic, as some people, as most people in the United States say. All of the column headings are in Gothic, but the stuff you're hoping to read, I mean, let's face it. I used to ask in my family history classes, my genealogical classes, would you hire the guy who says, I will read every word on every page as I look for your ancestor? And someone would say, oh, that sounds like a good idea. I'm saying that's the last person I'm going to read. Because let's face it, is this Grünhagen your person? Are you looking for a person named Grünhagen? No, you're looking for Minert. Pardon me, I'm looking for Minert. So the question I read as I go down all these names is, Minert, yes or no? No, 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 yes. Stop and read for detail. You do not need to read every single word on every page. Now, if you have that kind of time, if you're not paying for that, or if nobody's paying you, go ahead and do it. But most of us are thinking, I'm looking for Schmidt. Is either one of the first two a Schmidt? No. So right now, I don't care who's in the next columns. Okay, next one. This is fun. Okay, who can help us? Oh, this is quite different from the previous ones.
Okay, we have a couple people saying Latin.
Super. Yes. Latin is Latin the only language, or is Latin a language?
Paul says baptism, German, and Latin.
Baptism, German, and Latin. That's exactly right. Now, did you get that because you saw, oh, where's my pointer? You saw that word right there, spelled infans, infans. Then you saw this one, parentis. Wow. So here's the infant and here's the parent. This must be a baptism record. And those are Latin words, as in patrini, these are the witnesses, or we have godparents, sponsors. And over here, numerus et tempus, the number of the entry and the time. Tempus, you recognize that from the clock, tempus fugit, time flies. And sure enough, over here, NAT is for natus, born and born again. That's what baptism is, that's rebirth. Okay, great. But there is German here, because once we get past the anonymous, we have all this neat information in German. That's all German down here. And over here, there's a German abbreviation. There's und for and in German. So we have all kinds of neat German there in Latin mixed in. Okay, here we go. This one I think I got from the United States. What could be going? Oh, there's one word that gives the whole thing away. Who can see it? One word gives away everything.
Paul says confirmation.
Okay, top right corner, konfirmiert. These children are confirmed. Confirmation in both churches, very generally speaking, Catholic and Protestant, takes place at age 14, essentially. In most cases, this is done at Easter time, which is toward the end of one's 8th grade education, and until the days of Bismarck, where we started to push more and more people into post-secondary, it was the end of schooling. You had your 8 years. In some cases, you didn't have that many. But once you had that, you finished your 8th grade and you were confirmed in April of your let's see, after you're 14 years old. So, okay, alphabets. Alphabet's obviously konfirmiert because it's a Latin word, but am Palmsonntag, on Palm Sunday, the 1st of April, 1855, the following were confirmed. So what's the alphabet of all these names? Christian Zager, Wilhelm Tunnemann, Gottlieb Philipp Keck. What's the alphabet there?
We have someone says German and someone says Latin.
Okay, those names are in Latin, but then we switch back to German. Aus Hessen, he comes from Hessen. He comes from Württemberg. I can't see this because my own image is blocking that. Okay. Brownsville. Oh, Brownsville is Indiana. Pardon me. He comes from Württemberg, but he lives near Brownsville. Okay. And then this gal comes from Hessen. She comes from Hessen. There's another Hessen. So Hessen and Württemberg are the two states in Germany where these people all come from. That's not what you wanted because you wanted the exact town. Well, that's why we need German immigrants and American church records. Okay, here we go. Aha, totally different. Pre-printed. What is the alphabet of the pre-printed document?
Someone says Fraktur.
Fraktur is exactly correct. And because of that, every U is like every other U. Every N is like every other N. But what makes it easy to read a whole stack of hundreds of these documents? What is it about pre-printed records that makes them so easy to read?
Someone says form.
Right, keep going. Push that a bit.
Sections.
Pardon?
Sections
Yes.
and fields.
What is, by the way, the number one line? Vor- und Familienname. Rachel Bettis, you want to help us there?
That's first name and last name.
First name and last name. Every single page, hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands. Line number one is the same content. First and last names. Line number two, does anybody know? Geschlecht, männlich, weiblich. Back to you, Rachel.
Gender.
Gender. There you go. And the next one, Rachel, Alter, geboren.
Your age when you were born.
Hey, there we go. See, so if you're just looking for the name, you're not reading 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through 8. You're only reading line number 1. But once you find the one that says Minert, you stop and you read every detail down below. So otherwise, you have no reason to read the other. Only the names you need appear in line number 1. So you glue your eyes to line number 1 and keep hitting the next image, the next image, the next image. Back in the old days, it would just keep rolling that microfilm. I had a microfilm reader in my basement for many years. The ultimate convenience. Take the microfilm home with permission and use it there. Okay, yipes. Oh boy. Now, we love the column entries because we know that in the fourth column, the same kind of information page by page. But that's not true here. Why do experts say they would rather have this kind of record than a column entry? What kind of logic is that? Why would anybody prefer a big handwritten paragraph or even page instead of column entry?
A couple people are saying there's more information.
Yes, you are not restricted in any way about what you write here. So the column entry page probably doesn't have the occupation of the father, but this certainly could. And if you're dealing with a John Smith, as in Johann Schmidt, that occupation can be the difference between getting the right Johann Schmidt and the wrong one. So, yes, you're thinking, but at the same time, I don't know which line has the father's name. Oh, wait a second. Is this a baptismal record or is this a marriage? You've got to sort through there. Can anybody tell me what the content is? Language is obviously German.
We have someone saying baptism.
Baptism? Okay, tell me how you got to that. Show me a word that proves this is a baptismal record. Give me the line number.
Paul says geboren.
Okay, but geboren can also mean information about the groom or the bride. Look on line 5, dead center in this record.
Oh, Paul getauft line 1, and Charlie says marriage.
Right. On line 5, after 9 November 1860, getauft, baptized. Okay, born apparently on 9 November and baptized on 14 December. Wow. Okay. Now with that, you can start to pick apart the record. You're now looking for, hopefully, father and mother and the name of the child. That'd be great too. Okay. We've got time for a couple more. Now, this is great. Tell me everything you know. Language, alphabets, content, author. What do you know? 1884.
Death
This,
record?
pardon?
Death record.
How do you know?
Also death. Latin and German.
Okay, Latin, yes. All the personal names and place names are in the Latin alphabet. German for such things as, oh, wait a second. Okay, way over in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 column, it says August Heinrich und Johann Richtmüller. Und that is written in the German alphabet. But guess what? Under 1884, where it says the deceased, every bit of that is in Latin. Go down the next one, Ernst Philipp Hermann Schmidt. Okay, just below 1 August 1874, it's he selbst. That's written in Gothic. Otherwise, it looks like there are no more than 2 or 3 things in the entire record that are not Latin. That make it easier for you to read. Can you read all the dates? 19 October, 21 October, 12 December, 15 December, 12 May 1816. How old is the first person who dies? 68 years, 5 months, 7 days. Wow. You might be thinking, Yahoo, I'll take that anytime. So, well, that's great. We want to be successful, but we want to be challenged a little bit too. Okay. Oh, that's out of focus. Oh, there we go. We'll end with this one. Then we'll talk about a couple other things. 1826, totally handwritten, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. What can you do with this? Can anybody tell us anything about this? Laca analysis.
Okay, we have one person saying it's a marriage record.
And that person is absolutely correct.
Perfect.
But can you prove that to me? What tells you this is a marriage record? I see the word Eltern for parents. I expect that in every baptismal record.
Second column says Namen des Bräutigams und der Braut.
Exactly. Yes, it does say name of the groom and of the bride. That's column number 2. And sure enough, the groom is Jakob Schlecht. And the bride is Margareta without her last name. Oh no, wait a second. We're going to get it though. We're going to get Margareta's last name. Where is it?
With the parents, she says.
Right,
And
it's under the parents column, and it's line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Adam Böpple. Bopple. Adam Böpple. This is Southwest Germany. That's where they use LE for a diminutive. So Margaret Böpple. Now, what is column 3? Look at the last word in the title of column 3. What's going on? The last word in the title of column 3.
someone says religion.
Right, religion. So the question is, whoever is keeping this record has decided it's really important to know if you're one of us or one of them. I shouldn't say it in terms like that. That's cultural, and obviously it doesn't matter to me in the slightest whether they're Protestant or Catholic. I love them all. I especially love the ones who kept the record. So as soon as you say, boy, when I get to heaven and get my hands on that guy, I'll say, why did you write so rotten? No, you'll get your hands on him and you'll say, thank you for keeping the records. I had a hard time reading them, but I found somebody who could help me, and I'd never know her last name unless you had written the record. Because guess what? In the records of their 8 children in the next few years, it says the father is Jakob Schlecht and the mother is Margareta. Dead end. This record gives you her last name, and now you can go looking for her birth record, and back you go. So you'll be sort of, oh, gosh, this is killing me. This is so hard to read, but I'm so grateful you wrote it. You will be. Okay, well, let's skip down through the rest. This is such great stuff. I love these totally Latin ones. Baptizatus, There are so many cognates in here. So fun. Okay, who uses Laca analysis? Everybody. Now, here's a question for you. I'd like somebody to answer this. What's the difference between the Laca analysis when done by a novice and when done by an expert? I will contend that I'm absolutely correct in the first one. Everybody does a Laca analysis. And keep this in mind. If you're going down the stairs, most homes, traditional middle-class homes, have 14 steps in Utah going from one down to the other. Do you watch your left foot and your right foot hit each step as you go down? I would suggest nobody does. In fact, if you did that, you might actually fall. Your brain says, left foot go down 2 steps, right foot go down 2 steps. And it happens. So who can answer that question? What's the difference? Novice and expert.
That says, I guess there's a lot. Yeah, we have one person saying a lot of difference and one person saying no difference.
Okay, here's my suggestion, the amount of time. The expert will do the Laca analysis instantly. If I pulled some of my favorite people up and say, tell me Laca, they'll say, well, German, alphabets, Fraktur, Latin, Gothic, content, well, this is marriage, and author, church. They'll tell you all that in a matter of seconds. Okay, the novice will be thinking, wait a second, oh gosh, what am I going to do with this content? Help. Okay, so it's a question of time. Your questions. Okay, I'm not giving you a whole lot of time. But by the way, thank you very much for everybody who has piped in with their answers. Nearly every answer you gave was correct. I'm impressed and I'm grateful. This wouldn't be any fun without you. Some of you are wondering how you're doing with geography. If you move from Provo down to a little rinky-dink town with 900 people in it, average age 64, and by the way, my wife and I are raising the average. So, but no, this keeps going. Any place where I can get access. I finished 2 books in this series while on my mission, where Sister Bettis thought that I was quite busy doing mission stuff. Well, I was, but once in a blue moon, I had a little bit of time on a weekend where I could get in. So we finished a book on Texas, Nebraska, Indiana, Wisconsin. That is being printed this week. A couple months from now, another Wisconsin book. And a couple months after that, another Wisconsin book, totally Milwaukee. Okay, so, and those are all published by Family Roots Publishing. I should have put that down there. So tell your librarians to buy these. The books are 120 bucks a whack. Sorry about that. They're 500 and some pages. But go to your library, your societies, your university libraries, and tell them to buy these books. Okay, how can you help? Well, unfortunately, I can't find students who will work for me for free. Can you imagine that? They won't give me 10 hours of free time a week. Talk about spoiled. Well, anyway, we set up a 501c3 about 5 or 6 years ago. And so any donations you make, 20 bucks or 2,000, you'll get a statement from us that you'll use at the end. You'll give that to your accountant as a tax liability. And by the way, when you start doing those required minimum distributions, whatever they call those, you can send money from an IRA at any time straight to us, and it will never be taxed. This is non-taxed money out of your IRAs into German immigration research. Just write me an email and let me know, and I'll help you on that. Or go to the website. There's a donation link there. We need help. I lost a $4,000 donor this year, and it means I'm going to have to lay off a couple people. So, and almost every bit of it, I don't get paid a cent. I don't need it. The Heavenly Father's provided for my wife and me. And she doesn't ever come in and say, hey, use the geocra money for our vacation. She would never dream of doing that. Okay, all the books I sell, and if I'm paid for speaking at a conference, that all goes into this to keep these students working.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. We hope you enjoyed our webinar. A reminder, we will not be having a webinar next week because of Independence Day, but we hope that you'll be able to join us for our next one, which will be on July 11th with James Tanner. He'll be presenting on What Can I Do If My Ancestors Came from Hungary? A recording of this webinar will be made available next week, and you'll be able to view that on our YouTube channel or on our website. If you have any comments or questions, you can always email us at fh_webinars@byu.edu or follow our Facebook and Twitter. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week.